Legends of Nirn, Part 3. The Amulet of Kings, First Edition, by Wingareth Mahona. In the first years of the First Era, a powerful race of elves called the Ayleids, or the High Heartland Elves, ruled central Tamriel with an iron hand. The high and haughty Ayleids relied on their patrons, the treacherous Daedra lords, to provide armies of Daedra and dead spirits. With these fearless magical armies, the Ayleids preyed without mercy upon the young races of men, slaughtering or enslaving them at their whim. On behalf of the suffering human races, St. Alessia, the first in the line of the Cyrodiils, sought the aid of Akatosh, the dragon god of time and ruler of the noble Aedra. Akatosh, looking with pity upon the plight of men, drew precious blood from his own heart, blessed St. Alessia with his blood of dragons, and made a covenant. So long as Alessia's generations were true to the dragon blood, Akatosh would endeavor to seal tight the gates of oblivion and deny the armies of Daedra and undead to their enemies, the Daedra-loving Ayleids. In token of this covenant, Akatosh gave to Alessia and her descendants the Amulet of Kings and the eternal dragon fires of the Imperial City. Thus does Alessia become the first gem in the Cyrodiilic Amulet of Kings. The gem is the red diamond in the middle of the amulet. This is the symbol of the Empire, surrounded by 8 other gems, one for each of the divines. So long as the Empire shall maintain its worship of Akatosh and his kin, and so long as Alessia's heirs shall bear the Amulet of Kings, Akatosh and his divine kin maintain a strong barrier between Tamriel and oblivion, so that mortal man never need fear the devastating summoned hosts of Daedra lords. If the Empire should slacken in its dedication to the 8 divines, or if the blood of Alessia's heirs should fail, then shall the barriers between Tamriel and the Daedric realms fall, and Daedra worshippers might summon lesser Daedra and undead spirits to trouble the races of men. The Chronicles of the Holy Brothers of Maruk, Volume 4, The Cleansing of the Fane. Editor's note: this is one of the few surviving fragments of the chronicle of this first-era sect of the Alessian Order. It seems to have been kept at their great monastic complex at Lake Canellus, which was raised during the War of Righteousness, First Era 2321, and its archives destroyed or dispersed. Note also that the Alessian scribes of this time customarily dated the events from the Apiothus of Alessia, First Era 266. Herein are recorded the events of the year 127 of the Blessed Alessia. In this year was the day darkened all over the lands, and the sun was as if it were Massa, but 3 days old, and the stars about him at midday. This was the 5th of first seed. All who saw it were dismayed, and said that a great event should come hereafter. So it did, for that same year issued forth a great concourse of devils from the ancient elven temple Maldala, such as not had been seen since the days of King Belzara. These devils greatly afflicted the land, such that no man could plough or reap or seed, and the people appealed to the brothers of Maruk for succor. And then the abbot Cosmas gathered all the brothers and led them to Maldala, and also known as the High Fane in the Elvish tongue, and came against it with holy fire, and the foul demons were destroyed, and many devilish relics and books found therein were burned, and the land had peace for many years. The exclusionary mandates of Marukite selection. All are equal. That the Supreme Spirit, Akatosh, is of unitary essence as proven by the monolinearity of time. That Shazar, the missing sibling, is the singularity misplaced, and therefore doubly venerated. That the protein substrate that informs all denial of one is the Altmeri taint. That the prophet Most Simeon demonstrated that the monothought begets proper life. That the purpose of proper life is the expungement of the taint. That the arc of time provides the mortal theatre for the sacred expungement. That Akatosh is time, is proper life, is taint death. The Last King of the Ayleids, by Herminia Sinner. The Ayleids, or Heartland High Elves, ruled Cyrodiil in the long ages of myth before the beginning of recorded history. One of the earliest recorded dates, in fact, is the fall of the White Gold Tower in First Era 243, which is commonly assumed to mark the end of the Ayleids. Although Ayleid rule over Cyrodiil was broken in First Era 243, this was only one of the most obvious stages near the end of a long decline. The first 2 centuries of the First Era saw increasing strife between great Ayleid lords of Cyrodiil. Alessia appears to have taken advantage of a period of civil war to launch her uprising. Imperial historians have traditionally attributed her victory to intervention from Skyrim, but it appears she had at least as much help from rebel Ayleid lords during the siege of White Gold Tower. The popular image of the Ayleids as brutal slave masters is based, in fact, of course, but it is less well known that a number of Ayleid princes continued to rule in parts of Cyrodiil after 243 as vassals of the new Empress of Cyrodiil. This suggests either that Ayleid rule was not universally detested, or that Alessia and her successors were more pragmatic than is traditionally believed, or perhaps it is some of both. In any event, excavations at a number of Ayleid sites show continued occupation and even expansion during the so-called Late Ayleid period, First Era 243 to 498. At first, many Ayleid lords continued to rule as vassals of the new human regime. In some cases, Ayleid supporters of Alessia were even rewarded with new lands taken from slain enemies. It is not clear to what extent human slavery continued under the Cyrodiilic Empire. Humans continued to dwell in the Ayleid-ruled areas of Cyrodiil, but there is nothing definitive to show under what terms. This was an uneasy relationship from the beginning, and it was not destined to last long. Resentment at the continued presence of the Ayleid nobles within the empire was a contributing factor to the rise of the so-called Alessian Order, founded by Maruk. The first victims of the Alessians were the Ayleids of Cyrodiil. In the early 300s, the surviving Ayleid communities in human-ruled areas were obliterated one by one. The refugees temporarily swelled the power of the remaining Ayleid lordships. Then, in 361, the Alessians gained control of the empire and enforced the Alessian doctrines throughout the domain. The Ayleid lordships were abolished, and enforcement of this decree does not appear to have required much direct violence. It seems that by this point the balance of power was so overwhelmingly against them, their fate so long foreshadowed, that most of the remaining Ayleids simply left Cyrodiil, eventually being absorbed into the alien populations of Valanwood and High Rock. Indeed, the rise of the Durrani hegemony may be linked to the exodus of Ayleids from Cyrodiil, a connection so far studied very little by historians. Still, a remnant of Ayleid population seems to have survived the rule of the Alessians, because we've heard of the last king of the Ayleids joining the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, where the Durrani decisively defeated the Alessians in 482. How this king's people survived the preceding century is unknown. We do not even know who they were, although recent research points to a Natala as the possible last resting place of this last king. Unfortunately, in the current state of the empire, funds are no longer available for the proper scientific investigation of such extensive ruins, so the answer to these questions will have to be left to future generations. The Order of the Ancestor Moth, to be read by all novitates of the temple. The Order of the Ancestor Moth is as ancient as it is noble. we nurture and celebrate our beloved ancestors whose spirits are made manifest in the ancestor moths. Each moth carries the freon of an ancestor's spirit. Loosely translated as the will to peace, the freon can be sung into the silk produced by the ancestor moths. When the silk in turn is spun into cloth and embroidered with the genealogy of the correct ancestors, clothing of wondrous power can be made. Adepts of our order are gifted with prescient powers. The wisdom of our ancestors can sing the future into the present. For this reason, our order and our order alone has been given the privilege to interpret the Elder Scrolls. These writings exceed even the gods, both Aedra and Daedra. Such insight into the inner fabric of reality comes at a price. Each reading of the Elder Scrolls is more profound than the last. Each leaves the priest blind for longer and longer periods of time. Finally, the last reading achieves a nearly sublime understanding of the scroll's contents, but the priest is left permanently blinded to the light of this world. No longer can he read the scrolls. This monastery is dedicated to the service of these noble members of our order. They now live out their lives with the ancestor moths that they so love. Their underground domains are well suited to the moths. They raise and nurture the fragile creatures, singing to them constantly. They harvest the silk and spin it into bolts of cloth. They weave the cloth, embroidering it with the genealogies and histories of the ancestors that spun the silk. This is their new life. As they tend the ancestor moths, so we tend the blind monks. While they toil in the dark, we serve the light. They need food and water. We provide. They need tools and furniture. We provide. They need secrecy and anonymity. We provide. They need purveyors to sell the fruit of their labors. We provide. I hope you've been enjoying these lore readings, and if you have, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.